Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström, the author of several sewing books, including Sewing Jeans and Fit for Knits, and I also have my own sewing pattern line under the brand named The Lost Stitch. And I also do lots of other things, including video sewing courses.
My name is Malena Hjerpe, and I work as a freelance pattern maker, and I also create my own PDF patterns under the name Hazelhen Patterns.
And in today's episode, we have a suggestion from you, Malena, about a topic that we haven't really addressed as much in previous episode, even though we love to talk about fabric and the importance of picking the right fabric. And now we're going to dive even deeper into that topic, which is something that I think everyone needs to understand and know, but perhaps we are not as proficient in it. I think a lot of us, even though we love to sew, maybe we don't not have that good understanding of this particular topic when it comes to fabrics. And what is the topic, Malena, that we're going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about fibers today, the material. What are the fabrics made of? So it's not how they are made, it's what are they made of, like the raw material. And these two, like how it's made and what it's made of, there are a lot of terms, technology, like they can be a little bit mixed up sometimes, a little bit confusing. So today we're going to talk about the actual fibers, and hopefully you will be able to choose your fabric more easily in the future.
Yeah, so could you just, when we say fiber, what exactly do we mean if we start with the absolute basics here?
Yeah, I mean a fabric is made of either it's woven or knitted, and it's woven or knitted out of threads basically, and the thread contains of fibers, and these fibers could be either like natural fibers or synthetics or regenerative fibers. So there are like different, or they can be mixed as well. So it's like what is the fabric made of, like the ingredient of the fabric. So there are three different like main categories here, like the natural fiber, regenerated fiber, very difficult to say that, and synthetic fiber, which is man-made basically. So there are these three, categories, like, and then there are so many like subcategories during these as well. So lots of things to discuss in these.
Yeah, so should we start with the natural fibers? Could you give some examples on what type of fibers that are in that category, and what is the criteria for a natural fiber, so to speak? Because I do think this is where there's some confusion, right, between natural and another type of fibers.
Yeah, I mean, natural fabrics, it can actually be two or, well, 3 or 4 things, depending on how you see it. It could be made out of plants, or it could be animal fiber, like animal as in hair, wool, for example. Or it could be silk, which is made of, like the silk comes from a worm.
Worm, yeah.
Yeah, basically. And then it could, of course, be leather as well. Yeah. So basically, it's those 4 different, or 2 animal and plant different type of fabrics. And the most common is plant fabrics or fibers, which I think the most common is cotton. Cotton is a plant that grows, and then it has like, I mean, I'm sure most of you have seen a cotton plant. We can, I have some pictures of it on my Instagram that I can share as well on our Instagram. It's like this flower that has like, looks like a little bit like a small cotton candy, like a fluffy white flower. And these you take the fibers from, and then you can make it into cotton fabric. So that is the most common fabric, I would say, and fiber.
Right. And when you say plant-based, is that also included the type of fabric that are done from cellulose or trees, or is that in the other category, right?
Yeah,
so when
that
we
is
because
the
I
other
try to
category.
understand, because that's where I find it always gets a little bit confusing, because I mean, the base material is from plants, but it's so processed, right? So it ends up in a different category, right?
Like cellulose, like viscose and those kind of fabric, those are under the category regenerated fiber.
Right.
The raw material is a natural fiber. It comes from wood, for example, but it is so heavily processed that it is like a synthetic processing way of making the fiber. So that's why like it's a little bit in between. And synthetic fiber, that is, I mean, man-made fiber, it's basically oil, it's plastic.
Yeah.
So those are the three categories. And the viscose are like, it's in between, like, yeah, raw material, but very heavily chemical process for actually making the fiber. So in that sense, the natural fiber is, I mean, you would think that it's all natural, sounds great, but here it's also like fashion industry is really dirty. Cotton is one of the most heavily polluted fabric, like it uses so much water when it grows, lots and lots of chemicals to, how do you say, to prevent from pesticides, and so it's like so many chemicals used in the regular cotton when you grow them. So here it's a little bit, sounds great that it's natural, but it's not so sustainable, even though it is natural. There are better cotton as well, like BCI cotton is a Better Cotton Initiative, which means that it's not completely organic cotton, like there are high requirement, like you can't use chemicals or it like specific chemicals, I don't know, I'm not really sure, but it's like very specific for it to be able to call organic. BCI is more, they try to less chemicals, less water use, better work environment for the people who works with the cotton. So they are like trying to, how to say, lift every areas in the whole cotton supply chain, while organic cotton is only solely focused on the chemicals that are used. So some say that BCI cotton is like greenwashing. I don't agree with that, because BCI cotton is trying to more look of the whole perspective of the cotton fibers when it's like the whole from A to Z. So yeah, but definitely if you can choose, organic and BCI is definitely better than conventional cotton.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Other fibers that are like natural fiber, I have my little list here that I need to read from. Linen, that's a favorite of ours, and it comes from the flax plant. So that is really nice. It wrinkles a little bit when you work with it, but that's just I don't know, not benefit, but like a characteristic of the fabric. So if you're gonna sit down a lot in your clothes and you can't really have like maybe super tight linen clothes, but choose the right type of style and it will look amazing, to be honest. I love linen.
Yeah, and there's also some mixes as well, linen cotton, for instance, that kind of gives the best of both worlds. I think you get a little bit softer hand with the cotton, and a little less wrinkle prone, and it's a little easier to iron, but still you get some of the nice structure. And also linen. Yeah,
mixes are really common as well. I mean, you want to take the characteristics from like two different materials. As you say, that's also why you often have like some synthetic fiber mixed into natural fiber as well, to make it a little bit stronger, a little bit more durable, add some stretch perhaps, and unfortunately also to make it cheaper.
Yeah. And another great thing about linen is because it's so breathable, right? I would say, because that's like a hack in warm weather to wear like breezy linen clothes, right? Is that perceived, or is it true that linen has nice?
No, it's true. Absolutely true. Yeah. And it's the perfect garment when it's hot, moisture weather. It's so nice. It breathes in a completely different way compared to polyester, for example, that is basically plastic. It doesn't allow your body to breathe at all in the same way. So that's why we love natural fibers, because of it feels more comfortable. It's you don't sweat in the same way in them, and perfect for warm weathers.
Yeah,
and other natural like plant fibers that are maybe not so common, hemp, jute, I don't know if that's a Swedish or English word, or and rami. They are also different like plants that are made into a fiber. Not so common. I would say like linen and cotton is obviously the most biggest one.
Yeah, I find sometimes maybe that's of the the fiber or the processing, but I do find that hemp, there is quite, mostly mixes, I would say, that there's a mix between hemp and some other type of natural fiber, but I do find that hemp has a slightly rougher surface and lacks a little bit of the softness of
I agree.
Linen.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense that cotton and linen are more popular, to be honest.
And also, I guess both linen and hemp are definitely more sustainable, right? If I'm correct, compared to cotton. Yeah, hemp. I don't have so much info, but I can imagine, because again, as I said, like the cotton, for the plant to grow, it demands like warm weather, but then requires a lot of water, and it's usually also grown in areas where there may be a lack of fresh water, and then for it to be used for cotton growth it's a little bit prioritizing, maybe not in the best way. And here I like, when you think of working conditions for the people that are working here, like we often talk about how it is for the people in the factories that are sewing the garment, but for producing these fibers, these people are like forgotten almost. And here is like, it's been such a lot of people have died, I mean, from all the chemicals that are like sprayed on the cottons. So here is like why it's so important to preferably choose organic or BCI, because it's a dirty fiber, unfortunately, even though it's a natural fiber. Yeah, that's a big bummer for sure. And also linen, when it comes to properties, which we could address. I mean, I think the drawback, apart from if wrinkles, if that is a drawback, is that the fact it kind of grows, and that is true because I also am into a linen, because you can find like linen jersey or linen knits in which also is cool and nice, but it has a really coarse surface. But I would say both the knit version and the woven version has a tendency of expanding during wear if you use the pure form of 100% linen. Do you know why that is? Why linen has a tendency of expanding when when we wear it?
I don't know, to be honest. I wonder if it's because flax, like the actual plant, I mean, it's super long, and then I mean that becomes, I mean, obviously with some processing, it becomes the actual fiber as well, so it's super long. And I wonder if it's that the whole fiber like can stretch out a little bit. When you wash it, it usually like shrinks back again.
Right.
But this is also like why it's so important to choose the right pattern that is suitable for a linen fabric. So I wouldn't choose like very form-fitting, tight-fitted garments, because then it is gonna be more easily that it is stretched out. Think of airy clothes, a little bit more ease, generous ease. That is going to be more suitable, because then it's not going to be so much stress on the fabric, so it grows when wearing. But when you wash it, it usually recovers again, and you shouldn't have it in a dryer. Linen doesn't really do well in dryer.
Yeah, it does take it presses well. You can use fairly high heat on pressing linen, but you're right. I've noticed the same thing. It tends to pull together the fibers when you tumble dryer. Yeah. So I agree with you. It's definitely, but as well, it always shrinks back, and then it kind of, it expands around the width. Basically, I have my experience with linen that it kind of grows. It doesn't really expand lengthwise, but you can always pull it back. So I agree with you. So if you would do like an oversized shirt, for instance, would be a much better option than, say, doing like a fitted shirt with darts and things like that, because it would kind of lose a little bit of the shaping when you wear it. So yeah, I agree with you. But I love linen. I mean, I live in linen pants in the summer. It's basically only pants that works for me in the summer, and love it.
Yeah,
nice.
Linen pants are
wonderful fabric.
Are amazing.
Yeah.
So then that's, I would say, like the most common. Sure, there are some other plants as well that we haven't mentioned here. But moving on to the next natural fiber that comes from animal, the most common is different type of hair, basically. Like a wool comes from sheep's. There are different kinds of, like, also like cashmere comes from goat, mohair, don't know what animal that comes from. But Angora is rabbit, and then you can also have like yak wool.
Right.
So there are like a lot of different types of. The most common is obviously wool, I would say. And here, usually, maybe if it's a woven fabric, it's some sort of mix. It's not maybe 100% wool, but it's like wool and polyester blended together. Knitted, I would say maybe it's a little bit more common for it to have 100% wool, or have you, what do you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I would say so. I try to think what kind of mixes I've encountered. I have one that has a little bit wool and silk mix, which is a wonderful, luxurious. Nice. You get the best of both worlds. Speaking of that, let me see here if I've. Maybe I don't think wool and cotton is common. I don't really think I've encounred that. Yeah,
no,
I do
it's
think
usually some synthetic fiber like nylon or polyester or spandex, something like that, for to make it a little bit more durable. For example, if you're knitting by hand, knitting socks, having 100% wool is not a. My sisters mentioned this when I was back home this weekend, and they had. They have found some amazing stash of yarns on a sale, like a second-hand shop, a lot of 100% wool. And I was like, oh, that's great for like knitting socks. And I was like, yeah, no, you have to have some nylon in it, otherwise they are gonna be like worn down and gets whole basically, like when you walk on it. So it's not that durable in that sense. I mean, obviously on socks it's like very high pressure, but that's why you have some synthetic mixed into it to make it more durable. But wool, it's we talked a little bit about wool in a previous episode, and I mean it's amazing in this cold country to have wool garments.
Yeah, definitely. That was episode number 47, if you want to go back, and we talk a bit about sewing with wool, and especially with wool knits, and why we love it so much. And it's a big thing, as we say. You know, we love our linen in the summer and a wool in the winter. I guess if that would be my dream wardrobe, that would be what I would wearing most of the time, honestly.
Yeah, and also the thing like with these kind of hair material, like they age a little bit more beautifully. I mean, definitely there can be a little bit of pilling when it comes to all natural fibers. Also these like wool and cashmere, but it's just in a completely different way compared to an acrylic fiber or polyester knitted garment. It's like it doesn't. Yeah, it ages so much more beautifully. I'm just to compare like this. I think if you are watching the YouTube, you have seen this knitted scarf quite some time. I usually basically wear it every single day in the winter. I get cold easily, so I always wear it. This is cashmere. It's from H&M. It was I was part of the Modern Classic team, the knit and jersey team that. This was the first collection of cashmere we ever did on H&M, and it was like such a buzz around, like within the office, like we are going to use cashmere, like oh my god. So yeah, this is a sample from there. It's 14 years old, something, I think 13, 14 years old. I mean, I obviously washed it several times. I have not seen a single pill on it. It just, the quality is so much better compared to, I mean, showing a beanie now. I bought it this earlier this winter. This is 100% polyester, and I don't genuinely understand how it can pill so much. It's a beanie. I wear, like, sure, I put on the hoodie jacket hood, but how can it pill so much?
Yeah, I'm shocked,
it's horrible.
Honestly. And I think, I mean, now I'm going to go on a rant here, because everything has gone downhill. I mean, even synthetic fibers has gone downhill, because back in like the 70s and 80s, it was quite common to have also like knitted polyester, 100% polyester, but it didn't pill an acrylic the way it does now. So it's amazing how much it can pill. And that brings me to the point when you talk about cashmere as well, because we see now quite common in Sweden that a lot of like high street brands have started to launch their own like cashmere and merino wool collections at a price point that is definitely not that expensive when you think about what you get. Of course, it's more priced than other materials. But I bought a couple of things, and I noticed that it does. There is a level of quality difference. It's not all cashmere and not all merino garments or fibers are created the same. So, do you have any input? Could you please? Because it's really hard to tell when you buy something, of course, apart from the price tag. But why are the difference, even though it's basically from the same animal? I mean, the same source.
Yeah, I mean there are different qualities, of course. I mean, the hair could be like, in different qualities, if it's a better or worse. Then there's also a lot of during the process how it is made that I don't have that much knowledge of. But I think, I'm guessing now, but I think it could be the length of the fiber. That is like the main source if it's a good or bad quality. The longer the fiber, I mean, obviously when you spin it into threads, the less loops it's gonna be, the more stronger it's gonna be, then it is better. It doesn't pill that much. The shorter the fiber, I mean, it got so much more loose ends then that can create those pillings. Shorter fiber is obviously not as good, cheaper garments. So that could be one reason. Also, it could be because it really so many factors if a fabric will be pilling or not. It can also be how tightly the yarn is spun or how tightly it is knitted or woven as well. The looser everything is, the more it can be like the small threads can be like untangled, like create pills. So if you have a really loose knitted sweater, that is going to be more prone to pilling compared to a very tight knitted sweater. And I mean, these softly knitted, really lovely materials, they have been very popular. But yeah, it can create more, it's more danger for pilling than unfortunately.
Yeah, that's really interesting. No, and I should also, I learned this when I was in conversation at a party with a man who worked in the manufacturer side of the garment industry. This was a long time ago, but he said, and you have to say he was correct, that I mean, every wool pills basically, but the difference is that when it's 100% wool or similar, the pills is easy, either they just fall off by themselves or that they are very easy to remove. But whereas if you do, you mix in nylon, for instance, for more durability or to lower the price or whatever, the pills tend to be really hard to remove, which is why you perceive also there's that is one of the reasons, and also the friction between the different two type of fibers, that the synthetic and the wool cause some friction during wearing. So those two things that the pilling doesn't, is easily removed, or and the fact that it's is that correct, or correct explanations?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm trying to remember what my teacher now said 20 years ago when I was in school. But also like something how acrylic or like synthetic fibers are made, that they can be very long, which basically is also then that the pilling can just continue on forever and forever and forever, while the natural fiber is shorter, and then the pill, they are created in a little bit different way, so that also affects it. But if you, I mean, obviously, if you have 100% wool sweater and it peels a lot, go back to the store and do return it basically, because I mean there are certain level like it shouldn't peel like that much, then it is something wrong. But some pilling, you have to accept that. And it's, as you said, really easily removed as well. If you have like those like small machines, like teeny tiny vacuum cleaner, basically with knives that cut off the pills, it will be like brand new again. So invest in one of those. your 100% wool garments are gonna thank you. They are gonna look brand new.
Yeah, and I've had other things I've found helpful. I don't know how common it is, but when you buy, there's a famous wool blanket company in Sweden called Klippan, and then you get a little comb with that wool blanket. And I've actually found that comb to be quite helpful as well. Because the only tricky thing about the machine is you have to have the right operational, because otherwise, if the fabric is quite thin, there is a risk of cutting it if you angle it the wrong way. And another thing I also found helpful is actually to use a razor. You shave the way you shave your legs or whatever you're shaving your face. On wool coats, for instance, because they usually have like a 20% mix. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm not a big fan, as you can say. I try to avoid them, but some good quality, even good quality wool fabrics brands will have sometimes. And I found that just using a razor can actually also remove the pills. And I find that's also provides me with a little bit more control. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is like, yes, invest in your garments, and also you need to take care of your garments with these kind of things. I mean, you're gonna prolong the life a lot. I mean, and this is also like just like visual. It doesn't look like it's aging in the same way. So definitely be prepared to do that. It's so you're saving your garments basically.
Yeah, for sure. That's very good. All right then. We talked about plant-based, and we talked about one animal, or maybe several animals, rabbits,
rabbits and goats and everything.
Goats and everything else. But there are more animals, right, that can help us to provide fibers for our garments.
Yeah, the strangest one, the silkworm.
Yeah. That's so weird. Who invented that idea? Who came up with that idea? That's like so mind-blowing. That's the human brain is amazing. Yeah. No, so the silkworm is basically, when it's making a cocoon for itself, it basically spins a yarn around itself. And you can extract that fiber and create silk out of it. So this is, very great invention. Yeah.
And silk has really like it breathes as well, like, since it's a natural fiber and has usually a very nice shine to it. It can be a little bit like delicate, and like if you get stains on it, it's a little bit tricky to wash. So it's more of a fancier fabric. And here I noticed sometimes that it could be, I mean, brands, stores, whatever, are like trying to push satin, and like satin is something fancy, luxurious, and like I'm like, are you trying to sell it as silk? Because satin is a type of weave. Satin can be in polyester, cotton, silk, sure, but it's a how you weave the fabric, satin. Yeah. So it's not the same as silk. So don't try to sell it like it's high quality satin. It's like, well, I mean, that could be anything basically. So you're right.
I agree with you.
It's so
like
good to know.
Lux washing, I guess. I've seen that. It's not like beautiful satin shirt, and it's like 100 polyester. Just that it has a shiny surface. That's the only difference. I mean,
exactly.
There's nothing luxe about it at all.
No. It's just a way of you weave the fabric together. So don't.
It's a beautiful satin. I know. I've seen that kind of copy on a lot of sites, and I totally agree with you.
It sounds very fancy, but it's like but it could be also 100% polyester. So don't fall for that. But I think satin, it's maybe not so common in the fabric stores. Have you, I mean, again, we talked about this in the earlier episode, but it's not that common, I would say.
A silk satin?
Yeah. Silk in general.
No, silk in general. I guess there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, the price, I guess, just like with cotton and everything else, has been a price expansion. I guess that is one of the reasons. So I try to think. I definitely would say that it was more common with silk maybe back in the 80s and early 90s, I think. So I guess the price tag is definitely one of the reasons. It's probably too to cost prohibitive. And I mean, also I find that polyester has got like a luxe washing as well. I mean, I see a lot of like really high-end brands selling dresses for about, I would say, around €300, which is $300 for instance, that is just pure polyester. And back in the days, that was the kind of price tag you would pay for something made with silk. So I feel like silk has kind of like, it's in the shadow in lots of ways, especially when it comes to what you buy in stores. Yeah,
and this brings us a little bit to these synthetic fibers they are usually like, they try to be an imitation of the natural fiber. Like, for example, viscose and polyesters, they are usually trying to look like silk, but it obviously is a lot more cheaper to produce. And also, unfortunately to say, like, it's a little bit easier to wash polyester compared to silk. It's a synthetic fiber is basically a dead fiber. Nothing happens in that sense to it. You are using synthetic colorings. It doesn't like fade in the wash as well. So yeah, it's usually, especially with colors as well, we want to have it all natural, but natural things age, colors fade away, like gets washed away. So that's why we use synthetic coloring, for example, because it stays longer, basically. Except for when you have denims, for example, like jeans, then you want that natural faded look, and then you have to have like a real indigo dye, so it will fade away while you are wearing it and washing it. If you have a synthetic blue color, it's not gonna be faded away when you wear it. So that's a very good thing to keep an eye on. What kind of color is it if you want to buy a denim fabric, and because you want to have that faded look. But I think we have talked basically about all natural fibers. Leather we haven't mentioned anything about, but I have never shown anything in leather. I know nothing about it, so let's leave that maybe.
Yeah, we leave that, definitely. I'm no expert in sewing with leather as well. I've tried a couple of times and it was a struggle, so I
actually have a machine for leather. I got it from my mom. I don't know where she got it from. I think it's from my grandma. It's like really beautiful. It looks like one of those, like, you know, that you with your foot, like you pedal up and down, like to get it going. I think it has a machine. I haven't tried it. It's just standing in my studio, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with it? I don't sew with leather, but I can't get rid of it if it was my grandmother's. So yeah, let's see how I will solve that. But if we are moving on to the next categories, the regenerated types of fibers. So this is basically cellulose fibers that are made of wood. Raw material is wood, some kind of wood, could be different depending on a little bit what fabric it is. Then it is with chemicals made into basically liquid form, I think, and then created fibers from that then. So it is a natural raw material, but the process is very heavily chemical based. And this is like one of my, so annoying, when they talk about bamboo, for example, bamboo viscose, and it's like, but bamboo is such a great fiber, or like plant, it doesn't require water, like lots of water and chemicals when it grows, but don't greenwash it and say it's sustainable, because the process of turning it into a fabric, that is so dirty. So don't fall for the bamboo is supposed to be eco-friendly. It's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, very good point. And I think we've seen it perhaps a little bit more awareness around that. And I should also say another drawback when it comes to bamboo fabric is that it's not very durable. So if you buy bamboo socks, they're going to wear down really quickly, even though granted they are of course very comfortable to your skin. But again, there's several issues I would say with that kind of fibers. It's both it wears down really, really quickly.
Yeah, it peels a lot.
Peels a lot,
yeah.
and just it doesn't really wash as well. I mean, so honestly, I personally
it could be a
am
little
not
bit
a fan.
on how it is made, like if it's like loosely knitted or if it's a tight woven like weave, then it may be not peeling so much. So it's really, it might be like several different factors, but yeah, I agree. I have like most viscose that I have used hasn't been peeling that much, but it doesn't wash so well, to be honest. Like it loses its shape a little bit, so that's a little bit a downside to it. Woven viscose, I think it's a little bit better, to be honest, compared to knitted viscose. But I agree with you. Yeah, usually when I have viscose, it is with like 5 or 6% elaston in it. That helps a lot with the recovery of the fabric. So usually it is a mix then. But I would say like there are like different types of regenerated fabric. We have viscose, we have modal, we have cupro, bamboo, tencel, lyocell, acetate as well. So all these are like some sort of cellulosa and then heavily processed into a fiber. And viscose, as I said, usually it's made from not pine tree. What do you call the other one? The Christmas tree. I'm losing English words now.
Oh my God, get on.
But you know what I mean, like that kind of, yeah. And I mean, obviously they don't grow these trees solely for fabric consumption. Usually this is like a rest product from like when you're building houses and stuff, like obviously they can't use all the parts of the tree, so usually it's these like rest product that are turned into viscose. Modal, I think it is used specific type of tree, I don't know what, but they are like taking the outer edge just from the tree, so it doesn't need to be cut down. You just take the outer part. Beech? Not. I don't really know. The English terminology here is a little bit above me.
I'm just going to intersect because I did a quick check here, which is either spruce or fir. Fir is either the correct word of the fibers of
I wish
the
I
gran.
would have like yes, spruce. Of course, I knew that, but no,
but
sorry,
I knew
Christmas
fir,
trees,
and that's also because that was the way you use materials, I guess. So it can also be both these trees. But I guess. But Christmas tree, I guess everyone has a clear picture of what kind of.
You get my point.
Sorry, I had to keep on going. I just want to say that.
And cupro is actually a little bit interesting. That is, I had to Google this because I didn't remember. Cupro is made from cotton waste. So it's actually cotton. It's like the shortest yarn from the cotton that they don't want to use for cotton fabric. That they not melt down, but with chemicals make it into a mass, and then they create new fibers of it. So cupro is actually cotton based, but made in a synthetic way. And the bamboo viscose, I mean, then it comes from bamboo, of course. We have lyocell and tencel. That's a little bit interesting because lyocell, I think is it made of eucalyptus tree? I think. I'm not 100% sure, but a tree. Tencel is actually a brand name. So Tencel is a lyocell, but a lyocell is like anyone can make lyocell, but it's only one company called Lenzing that are allowed to make Tencel. The good thing about the company Lenzing and Tencel, they have like a closed loop for the chemicals. So when viscose uses a lot of chemicals in the process, and then basically the chemicals are let out. They don't take care of the chemicals. Lyocell actually, they don't throw it away. It doesn't go to waste. Like I don't know if they reuse it or how they actually do it, but it's a more obviously than eco-friendly way because they are not letting out a lot of chemicals into the environment. So if there is a Tencel option, use that compared to viscose. And viscose, there are better and worse viscoses as well regarding how much chemicals are used and what they are actually doing with the chemicals afterwards.
I should just intersect there because I did a quick check there. Lyocell is basically the unbranded version of Tencel,
Yeah.
so it can be used to basically any type of fibers, really cellulose fiber. It's not a particular fabric. It's just, as you say, the process.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if it's modal then, because some of these fabrics are like made from the eucalyptus tree. I don't remember.
Lyocell is basically the not patented version of Tencel, I think.
So but Tencel is the same. It's a type of like it's always process, lyocell, but lyocell can't be always called Tencel.
Exactly.
It's a branded.
But it's as you say, the close process manufacturing, which is of course why we should always try to find that, because it's definitely the better option compared to regular rayon or viscose that is, the most common type of cellulose fabric.
Yeah. Then we have the last in this group, acetate. To be honest, I have really bad knowledge about acetate. I know it's usually quite cheap. You use it as lining. It's quite like a slippery surface, so it's very like easy to, it's good to have as a lining on a coat, for example. Like it's easy to get dressed, put your arms through it doesn't get stuck. But I think acetate, you only use it for lining. It's not like a shell fabric material.
No, I agree. I've seen it sometimes mixed as a mixed fabric as well. I've seen some blends. I can't remember top of mind, but I've definitely seen acetate as an addition to other type of fibers as well. But I agree with you. Acetate kind of looks a little bit cheap as well. It doesn't really. It's good for as you say, the lining, but you don't really. You don't want to sew a dress with acetate. No, I don't know. I'm sure you could do it to make it look better, but it's definitely look like a cheap silk. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think that's why it actually is invented. a cheaper version of silk.
Yeah.
Then we have the last group, the synthetic fiber. And these are man-made. The raw material is basically oil. So there is definitely a time and place for these fabrics. It's not all bad, but they should be used with caution, I think. The worst way of using it is to produce quick trends, because it's cheap to use this material, and to have it that's basically fast fashion. And unfortunately, I would say that is the main category for where this fabric is used, which is a little bit sad. But there are different types of synthetic fibers. I think the most common one is acrylic and polyester. There are so many different types of polyacetate, polyamide, I don't know exactly the difference here, if it's different plastic types. But then we also have nylon, and we have a really good category, elastin, how do you pronounce it? Elastin? Spandex and lycra. And basically these are all the same. I think in Europe we call it elastin. I think in North America we call it spandex. And lycra is actually a branded name. So it's a specific company that makes lycra that are only allowed to call it lycra. But it is basically a type of spandex and elastin. And this one you use mostly as a mix. You can have 4, 5, 6% mix in a cotton jersey. That will help a lot with the recovery. You can also have it in woven fabrics. It basically gives you a little bit of stretch, and it helps the fabric to recover afterwards. So there are a lot of mixes. I mean, you don't see 100%, or maybe for swimmer, I don't know, but you don't see 100% elastin. It's usually just a few percentage of a fabric.
Yeah, right. I think it's almost like a silicone fiber. I think it's hard. It doesn't really behave like a fabric when you have it purely.
Yeah, but it's not I think nice it's even or anything.
No, I agree. I mean, usually I think the most I've seen is about 20% in and that is of course for swimwear for sure. And if you have had the t-shirt and it's starting to you have worn it a lot, and you see these small white threads, and then all of a sudden the fabric is starting to bubble out, then it is those
spandex, elastan fabric that are breaking, and that's the small white threads you basically see. But it is really they serve a purpose when, I think, especially for knitwear, that it helps so much with the recovery.
Yeah.
But these are, I mean, acrylic. I'm trying to, like, polyester, there is definitely a purpose for that. I have some really nice, I mean, honestly, polyester garments that have held its shape really beautifully, never tight fitted, like obviously always a little bit more looser because it is plastic, basically. And when you wear, like, for example, running tights, like those are usually a mix. It's not 100% polyester. It's usually a mix with different types of synthetic fibers. But acrylic, I can't find one purpose where it's good to use acrylic. Acrylic is basically wool lookalike, but it peels like nightmare. It doesn't age well at all. Like and the hand feeling acrylic, and it can look pretty nice, and then you like touch it, like it just like feels.
It's kind of static. Also, it's right. It's static.
God, it's so static.
And it also. But it was. I think it's become less common now. But I think everyone that has some decades behind them will remember that acrylic was a huge thing. I mean, 100% acrylic sweaters. Like if you go to a secondhand shop, and you check out like 60s and 70s sweaters, they are very often 100% acrylic. And I would say the funny thing about acrylic is such a useless fiber because it's hot when it's hot and it's cold. So it's like, I mean, and it's cold when it's cold. So it doesn't help. It's always the opposite. I mean, we talked about linen, for instance. That's a lovely way to keep cool, and wool is fantastic in the winter. But if the acrylic, it doesn't have any heating properties. So if you have an acrylic sweater, you're going to freeze in the winter, and if you use acrylic in the summer, you're going to sweat like crazy. So I agree with you. It's the most non-functional fiber ever. I
mean, it can look really nice from the beginning. I mean, really cheap knitted sweaters, like beautiful sweaters in the stores. But if they are cheap, like, I can guarantee they are acrylic then. And they are not you're gonna wear it a couple of times, wash it, and then it's just gonna start to peel like crazy. Yeah, I know, I really don't like acrylics. But I don't see it, to be honest, or maybe it's just because I haven't been looking. But acrylic fabrics that you buy in like a fabric store, that is not that common, I think.
No, I agree with you. Maybe
yes, there are, but
of
not
course.
Acrylic.
I wonder, sometimes you see this, we talked about sweater knits in a previous episode as well. Sometimes I've seen like that kind of mixes, for instance, acrylic and mohair, maybe.
Yeah.
So you use it as a filler. But you're right, that kind of old school acrylic fabric that we all remember from, or at least us in the older generation. Remember that you're right. Yeah, I do. I have one. Yeah, I remember now. Ribbing. When you buy this heavy-duty ribbing, for instance, would you do when you would sew like a jacket, for instance, and you want to put ribbing on the cuffs, that is quite common to find acrylic ribbing, but not garment fabric. I agree with you, at least not here in Sweden. It was really interesting because I know we have listeners all over the world, so it will be really interesting to hear if acrylic fiber is something that you encounter when you go fabric shopping or not. So it would be really interesting to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, and usually, as you said, it's a mix. Like it could be 30, 40, 60% acrylic, and then it's something else, like 6% wool, and they call it a wool cardigan. It's like, yeah, that's 6%. Come on, like that's just trying to, I don't know if it's greenwashing, quality washing, whatever you want to call it.
Wool washing.
Yeah,
lots of washing here.
Yeah, no, but it's acrylic. That's my nemesis when it comes to fiber. I do not like it. And we mentioned nylon as well. Nylon, I would say, is also always a mix. It's never 100% nylon. I mean, if you have like stockings, tights, whatever you call it, then yeah, that could be nylon, because that is like a really durable fiber. Could be really thin, but usually have a mix of it to make the fiber stronger. So you can mix it with, viscose or wool or whatever. So that's usually a mix. And a lot of times there are mixes of fabric to get it a little bit cheaper, unfortunately, in most cases, but also to take like the good qualities of the different fabrics. For example, said that pocket fabric is usually not 100% cotton. It's a mix between cotton and polyester, and the polyester makes it a lot stronger then, so it's more durable. Yep. So it's not all bad, these mixes. One thing I'm a little bit conflicted about, we talk about this a lot in like how to make fashion more sustainable, and then they talk a lot about that we need to think about the whole process, like how, like, you make the garment, but how is it also going to be recycled? And for it to be able, if you want to recycle a fabric, like make it into new fabric, then those mixes are really difficult to reuse. 100% cotton can be like reused into new, recyclable cotton. It can't be 100% recyclable cotton, because the fibers, when you recycle cotton, is going to be too short. So you have to mix it up with new cotton as well to make it longer fiber. So the new fiber are like longer, and it makes the fabric stronger, because otherwise it would be too weak. So if it is a cotton elastan mix, then it is really difficult to use the fiber. You can't make it into a new fabric, basically, because it is a mix between natural fiber and synthetic fiber. Here I am a little bit conflicted. Like, how should we think? Should we only use like natural fibers mixes or synthetic mixes? But there are a purpose why you use elastan, for example. It is going to make the garment more recover better and holds its shape better. So should we think that, should we already think about how it should be recycled, or should we think this fabric needs to perform as well as possible, so I can wear this garment as long as possible, so I don't buy more garments in the future? I'm a little bit conflicted here. I don't know the right answer. What I do know is that when you recycle garments, when you like give it back to the stores or something, like they say they will recycle it, 3%, about 3% is used into new clothing fiber or material. So that's a little bit of way of greenwashing, to be honest. They can use it into stuffing for car seats and other things, but it's not like reused into new fiber. Synthetic fibers, polyester, it's plastic. You can basically melt it down. Obviously a complicated process, but still. So there it's a little bit easier to reuse. But this whole... it's so complicated. It's so complex.
Complicated. I wish we had but that's why it's so good to talk about these topics in this format, right? Now we're giving this an hour where we can actually address the nuances of it, and you who listen or watches us can do your own. You have the knowledge, and we can talk about this, and we can say do this and don't do this. I totally agree with you.
It's such a complicated.
Yeah,
and also
I was thinking about.
I was going to say that polyester. There is recycled polyester, and often you can see it in ready to wear. We have recycled polyester. Unfortunately, I've just read some article about it, so I don't have all the facts now. But it's. As I said, it's difficult to use a polyester from garments, maybe. So then they use PET bottles instead for this to make new recycled polyester. Well, what happens with the PET bottle industry then? Then they had like a good ecosystem within themselves. Like they reused the PET bottles into new bottles, and that was basically not closed loop, but you know what I mean. And now the fashion industry comes and is like, ooh, we need these PET bottles. We are going to take them. Well, then the PET bottles are like, well, what material are we going to use? Okay, we are going to use raw oil then again. So it's like, but now the fashion industry is messing up with the PET bottle industry. So it's like, is recyclable polyester so good then if it's, I don't know. Yeah. It's but it's complicated. It's
very complicated.
It's so many factors and so many. I mean, this could be a whole podcast series just about these kind of topics.
For sure, and I think also I guess if we try to think about it positively, hopefully there is a way of like having more like conscious production cycle and more efficient way of doing it and eliminating, you know, a lot of the extra steps, because that's also that comes with this. There's a lot of transportations and moving back and forth. I mean, all over the globe in order to make this recycling loop happening. So there's a lot of other things going on besides, you know, it's not very straightforward. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that also taxes the resources. And I think if we were able to find a way of closing that loop and minimizing that extra waste, I think that could also be like an attractive alternative for sure. And again, as you say, it's good to have this nuance because we do see a lot of eco-washing, I mean, right now, and every brand love to flaunt that they are using 20% recycled polyester in this particular garment, maybe 80% is new. I mean, again, doesn't automatically, as you put so great, Malena, it doesn't automatically makes it better because that polyester has been picked from somewhere else. It's the same thing, or a similar thing, I guess. We had for a while here in Sweden like a plastic bag fee. So when you went to grocery store, you paid a few extra kronas in our
extra
currency.
Tax, basically.
Extra tax, basically. Yeah, right. In a way of like minimizing, you know, the plastic waste. But the problem is that we use those plastics bags for waste as waste bags. So then. And those those plastic bags that you bought in store, they were quite sustainably. Probably some would, you know, mixing, and they used different types. They had the bags in the store in Sweden had gone a long way. You know, it used like sugar fibers. It has like it wasn't a nice system, and it was more environmental friendly. And now each of us had to start buying, you know, those on a roll trash bags, and they were not sustainably produced at all. So they are actually much worse than. So we didn't solve anything because unfortunately we do still have a lot of trash, even though we try to recycle and everything like that, and we do that pretty well. I would say in Sweden we have a good recycling ecosystem, and a lot of people take that seriously, and there's laws in place that we have to recycle stuff. But yeah, so now they remove that tax, I think, at the start of this year or just before. But again, that shows how, and you think you solve a problem, but you just move that problem to another area, and in that case, actually made it worse. So.
Yeah, no,
very unfortunate and short-sighted.
Yeah, I got so annoyed by that. Yeah, because it was a working system. I think everybody used them as trash plastic bags then. So it was a closed loop, basically. I never bought extra plastic bags, but now I had to start. It was like so stupid. And then like the worst, I mean, the whole point is like, yes, less plastic consumption, and of course, no like plastic waste in the nature, which is obviously the most important thing, and that people should start to reuse the plastic bags in grocery stores. So then they came out with these reusable bags instead. And I was like, but what are they made of? Polyester. That's plastic. Right. You didn't solve a problem here. Like, no. Sure, you made a reusable plastic bag, but it's still plastic. Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly, and we still need those plastic bags for the trash, right? So now we have to double, because we have to have reusable plastic bags when we go shopping, and we still have to have the plastic bags when we are, you know, collecting the trash. Yeah. So yeah, it was such a. it was such a step backwards, and but again, I think that goes to show, and it's also. There's a saying, I don't know if I put it right, but where you have like the camels and the, how do we say that saying, when you do something short-sighted and you think that it has a massive impact, and I think we've seen that also. Well, how should I say? It's like a performative, almost like a performative environment, and I guess also brands like to say, "Oh, now we are quitting those plastic straws," and obviously that's a good point, but still, it's not. That's probably not the biggest impact that we can do on the environment, but it's so nice. It's such an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Oh, look how environmentally friendly we are because we stopped using plastic straws for our sodas or iced coffee or whatever. And of course, that's a good point, but perhaps there are other things,
Yeah, that's not the thing that is going to destroy the world or save the world.
Yeah.
And the thing most problematic, I think, about this greenwashing is that when the customer get the sense of that, now when I recycle these, I have a bag of recycled clothes that I'm going to give to the store. I get a little bit credit back so I can shop more. I do a good thing, so I'm allowed to buy new stuff because I recycled. But these are organic cotton, so I can buy them. It's okay then. No, it's not. Yes, it's like a good thing all over, like to have more organic things and everything. But the unfortunate thing is that the mass overproduction, consumption, that needs to be lowered. Unfortunately, and it's like it's the easiest thing to say, the most difficult thing to do, because that will, I mean, basically you say to everyone that you need to sell less, you need to buy less. That's not a fun thing. A lot of jobs are depending on it. I mean, it's the whole economy is built up upon it. So how are you going to solve that?
Yeah, and by the way, I'm going to do a side note because a couple of episodes ago we talked about, and you particularly talked about Shein and Timo and those brands and the fast fashion and lots of massive problem that comes with that. And there are, we talked about regulation, there are a few things happening, but one of the things that is now, because those garment has, so it's we talked about the fact that it's so unregulated for one of the things, and you have no idea about the chemicals and stuff like that. And now second-hand shops here in Sweden have started to refuse to sell those clothes. So again, speaking about,
such an amazing taking a stand, like that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and that also shows how disposable this fashion is, because it can't even be resold. So yeah, I would say I do feel like, and I've seen some, there is less according to the stats. I mean, I'm talking Sweden here, but according to the stats of the mail companies and stuff like that, orders has actually decreased here in Sweden from these type of fast fashion brands that we are mentioning here. And I'm not ashamed to name names, for instance Shein and Timo, and there are of course other brands as well. So as such a slow, I think the tide is slowly turning, and hopefully we can see more of that in the future. But at least that, again, so when you buy something, it's longevity is so crucial, because that also gives it second life to someone else, instead of the disposable fashion. And as you say, Malena, we have a good system now here in Sweden. It's very easy to resell garments. There are lots of online platforms and everything like that, but as you say, it can also encourage us to shop more, because then we feel like we are not doing a bad thing because we give it second life. There are so many things, and I love this kind of discussion because it has so many nuances, and that's why it's so good that we can actually talk about it like this instead of doing it in a very simplified manner.
I read somewhere that there are already produced for the next 6 generations. Like there are already so much out there. So like, we don't want to end this podcast on a this horrible, gloomy note.
The world is a dark place. It kind of is, but,
I mean, if we try to look at this positive now.
We're not going to do positive washing, but we try to keep the nuances right. But again, I did have some good news that there are a few things happening at the worst fast fashion, at least here in Sweden. So hopefully you that are listening in other countries are seeing similar initiatives that actually both the government and and consumers are taking a stance.
Things are happening. And if you are going to buy fabric, if you can do a more sustainable option, organic or tencel, for example, 100% wool or whatever, choose those if you can, and maybe more important, choose the one that you will actually love, that you will wear so often, and that you will really invest in those fabrics instead. What do you love? And in the end, then, what are you going to wear so much that you maybe don't need to buy so many new things after that? So instead of trying to just choose less, but choose well and make it last, as Vivienne Westwood says. I think that is point. The best mindset to have when you buy basically anything. If you don't like it, but it's organic, you buy it, you don't really wear it. I mean, that's still a waste for the nature. So choose what you love and make that last.
I so agree with you. Great words. And I just want to add that as well. We talked about in the previous episode, number 47, about the fact that maybe wool fabrics is quite cost prohibitive and there's a sticker shock to it. And I made the argument that, it definitely is. But on the other hand, the kind of wool fabrics that I've sewn, regardless if it's woven or knits, has held up for decades in most cases. So to me, that has been one of my best investment, even though, of course, so I think, again, going for good quality fabric, I think we can all agree, everyone who's listening and watching as well, that we don't sew to save money if you compare it to fast fashion. I think it's
nobody within this hobby is like, oh, please, I do it for the financial aspect of it.
That's probably the only one who thinks that, are the ones that doesn't sew. But again, my argument is always that, of course, some fabrics are quite pricey, and good materials and good fibers, good linen fabric, good wool fabric, they have a hefty yard cost. I mean, but also I like to say that, well, compare that to what a high-end ready-to-made garment. So, for instance, you can find really nice dead stock fabric from really high-end fashion brands, for instance, and if you would buy a coat from them, that coat would cost at least 1,000 or 1,000 or even 2,000 euros or US dollars. I mean, that's the kind of level, and then you can get that fabric and maybe sew a coat that you would pay, say, €100 or $100 US dollar. Yeah, of course, it's very expensive to pay 50 euros per meters of wool fabric. I don't want to do that, but compare that.
Compare it to the right thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I think that's where you're going to save money, is when you buy good quality, expensive fabric. That's the best way of saving and being more environmentally friendly, because then you have, hopefully, I mean, there are of course bad eggs in every basket, but most of the time I found that when I've splurged on good quality fabrics with good fibers, then I have not been disappointed. But when I skimp on that, pilling will happen, and
so true. It's it becomes expensive to buy cheap in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. All right, then. I love this episode, and I've learned so much, Malena. Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
And I mean,
I think everyone will appreciate this.
And we have barely scratched the surface, I think, on each these different types. So if you have any questions, if you want us to elaborate even more, just send us a mail or give us a comment, or reach out, and we'll see what interests you.
Absolutely, because as we said before we start recording, we can do a deep dive into. We could do an episode just on one particular fiber here, right? And all the things that goes into that, from everything from sewing and washing, which I definitely recommend you check out the episode before this, number 47, because Malena also shares lots of great tips on washing as well. She is an expert of so many things. I mean, this is like a masterclass. Listen to Malena and her being an expert on all this topic. She's also an expert on washing, which I had no idea. So do not go back and listen to episode 47.
Nice. Thank you. Not obsessed anal about it. Expert. I'll take that.
Yeah, your mind will be blown if you haven't listened to that episode, because mine was for sure. Anyways, thank you so much for listening, and do keep in touch. Either you can email us at stitchingtalespod@gmail.com, or you can go over to our Instagram account, stitchingtalespod, or on our YouTube channel, Stitching Tales Pod, where you can, of course, also comment. And as Malena says, if you have any questions and topic suggestions, we would love to know, because this is something we definitely want to talk more about in the future. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe. Bye!
Bye-bye!